You must notice your free will separate from language. Our free will, for now, is defined by the language. You know, free will is like a voice that is using words, that is choosing words. And you can say, in a world where we have an outer experience of images and an inner experience of images, free will is attention, and language is a content, is a part of the content of this attention. There's this view that we are creatures and individuality was in the room first. That means it was as if like we are individuals and nothing else. But you know, in certain cultures, especially mystical cultures, the person some point throughout the life would transform. They were it is possible to experience yourself as the presence of your whole moment rather than a certain relationship of what's arising as the content in the moment. When I look in the mirror, I notice myself, but that self is also, there is something else behind me in the mirror, the world. So you can say a mirror is only showing a world, but when we look in the mirror, we see ourselves. That the notion of human, you know, there's this quote I'm going to read for you. I just remembered it. It's by Sadi about humanity. And it's saying something that if you don't, um, just a second, let me find the quote. It's an incredible quote, guys. Check this out. This is the quote. Sadi is a Persian poet. He says, from a while back, he says, the name of human you cannot remain. Having been created of one essence. Oh, wait. It's not the full quote. Hang on, guys. Check this out. This is from Sadi. He says, human beings are members of a whole, in creation of one essence and soul. If one member is afflicted with pain, other members uneasy will remain. If you have no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain. That last line was what I remembered. If you have no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain. Sadi said this, I don't know, maybe like 500 years ago or something, 600 years ago. For me, our free will is expressing as an individual object, but also as a subjective name. We are naming our free will. Because what is the person? If you just look at the biological body, and if the body never moved, we'd be a statue. Like if you never moved as a human being, there would be no personality. What would your personality be if you were a statue, if you never moved? You know, so it is our motion that animates meaning. And that's the thing, that there was a time where we were just objects looking around. Then we were objects that looked around to such a degree that we saw ourselves as a subject in the world of our vision. So when it comes to noticing What is freedom? If there's an opportunity cost to any sort of willingness, anything you do on this planet, there's other things you don't have the freedom of. You know, so freedom, full freedom, has to be on a subjective level. Objectively, what freedom? I mean, let's say we had the perfect civilization, perfect government, perfect laws, but still, do you think nature is giving us a break? Do you know? Nature is doing its thing regardless of man's civility or the absence of it. So the way that we can notice that there's a separation from the language that is being the subjective meaning of the moment and the mere attention provided through the objective position, it's pretty much when an object looks at them in the mirror, it's actually a subject that sees itself. Um, so you think, give me a second, I'm trying to put this for you so you can see it. Uh, that's the translation of it. I mean, just search the quote. If you so you think just search what I pasted in the chat section, you'll find references for it. That means if you become really numb to the world and you stop caring for your outer realms, technically somewhere in your psyche you have stopped caring for the inner realms. You see? It's like this, that in life, if you don't stand true, to stay true to yourself is, believe it or not, a kind of battle, a kind of fight. Okay? That many things, pretty much the way the world is designed is our eyes open in the morning and waves of information collide with us. Different waves of information. Since my childhood, I have felt it. Every day I wake up, new series of events, new patterns of recognition, new moments of creation, and even new moments where what was valued is gone. Do you know, it's like our desires are like wanting our hair to never grow. You know, that's the issue of a desire. You know, it's like, and sometimes I wonder why. Because when you look at animals, you look at all the animals, they don't suffer. They suffer, of course, when like a lion bites a gazelle, sure, the gazelle suffers in that moment. But the gazelle doesn't go on living thinking of like suffering. Even if it gets chased by a lion, it will then find itself by a river or something, drink some water, and it doesn't have an opinion. So I honestly feel the reason we are suffering is due to some sort of evolutionary intervention. And this evolutionary intervention has made us conscious of processes that we were not supposed to be conscious of. You see, because when I look at the human body, it's weird, guys. It was as if we stood up too early. When you look at the biology of the hand, anybody who's listening to me, just for a second, try this out. Put your palms on the ground and try to, for a second, sit like a four-limbed animal. You know, just stand try to just be like a four-limbed creature for a moment for yourself. You're going to notice the body is designed. You see, our palms are flat. Our palms are not circular. They're not like cups, even though they have malleability, but the palm is flat. It was as if we were walking on our hands first. Do you know? Everybody was doing handstands back in the day. All animals were, standing on their hands. But now man is standing in his mind. He's standing in his vision. He is looking at the problems of the realm and he's roaring. You see, there was something, there's a character which I didn't really like, to be honest, from Game of Thrones. There was a character I didn't like, but his viewpoint I liked, right? And it was this character named Varys who was with Tyrion, Peter Dinklage, the actor, I forget the other actor. And Varys, there was some moment where suddenly they ask him, what's in it for you? And Varys says, I want what's best for the realm. And it's very weird. So, guys, in the chat section, John says the suffering is a mental program only, a parasitic play on, or empathy. I would say, John, you're speaking like a Stoic, and what that means is the Stoics realized it was Epictetus would say this: we suffer not from the events inside our lives, in our lives. We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from the judgments we have about them. That means yes. That mental program is the definer of the condition that your free will finds itself. And language is playing a part here. Language is something that has been pushed aside, and reality and imagination are fighting wars, but we don't realize language is sitting there in the middle laughing. Language is the most important branch of knowledge. It is the main branch of knowledge that all branches of knowledge step out. To comprehend what it means to speak in the void is like to comprehend the rarest opportunity in the cosmos. If there is a probability that rather than we are matter in space, we are space in matter. That emptiness is the mind's gift to all that it can be. And we are fearing it. We are fearing the void verse. Just, locking ourselves in a universe and not even acknowledging that it's a dualiverse. Not acknowledging that there's duality in the works and there's also the void. And the singular is the bridge between the two. You can say the singular is the bridge between the void and the dual. You can say the dual is the bridge between the singular and the infinite. And you can say the infinite is the bridge between the dual and the void. The dual and the void. Sounds like a band. What can we do in the now of nows? What can we do with existence? Really nothing. Existence is just there. What we can do is move existence, and as we move, we notice it is not existence moving existence, it's an experiential factor. Literally, it's as if we're looking at a chessboard and moving the chess pieces. The mind is the chess master, the body is the chessboard. The universe, the laws of the universe are the laws of the chessboard. And on this chessboard, it is the known individual mind playing chess with the unknown collective, with the collective unconscious. So in this chess game, this is the mystic's approach, and this is, let's say, the average man's approach. The average man's approach is, it's my turn. Like instantly wants to make a move. You know, this is what changes, differentiates between, you can say, commanding officers that have been over more than 10 battles and commanding officers that have only been in 2 battles, for example. The more you are in this system, the less exciting what you see initially becomes. That's the thing. That means the more you endure, the more you see. The more you see, the less you are the sight you were before. That means there's 2 ways to crystallize our species' freedom of will. Our freedom depends on the space of our willingness, how we can will to move in a space. That means if you don't have an empty piece of paper, it doesn't matter how many pens you hold. It doesn't matter what ink your pen has. If there's nothing for it, nowhere for it to be written, it's not applicable. You know? The way civilization is extended forth is that it has come to a materialistic cave, which it doesn't want to step outside of. If it is to step out of the materialistic cave, it has to entertain the notion that abstraction has a firmer position. Right now, somebody tells, some people, they say, here's the thing, it's like how we're discriminating between the validity of an experiential memory from a dream state compared to an experiential memory from the conscious waking state. In the conscious waking state, it's like I'm in the dream, but the dream is like, it's like the dream is dreaming reality. It's like reality is dreaming imagination, and in the dream state, imagination is dreaming reality. As Sadi says, if you have no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain. That means the point of being a human being, like honestly, if you were a completely different species, I would probably not have the same talk. That means if, for example, this was the future, let's say, and we had actual alien immigration from different planets, okay? And in this alien immigration, we had a bunch of aliens come and live as members of the human civilization, and we went to the aliens, some human beings went to that alien's planet, let's say, and lived as members of that alien civilization. You know, so imagine Earth is becoming a place. In my science fiction novel, I have depicted this, where I have written that in the year 5025, robots are living like human beings. Human beings have elevated to a sort of angelic level to the robots, so robots can't see human beings. You know, only, and there is also the notion of extraterrestrials being living among us, inferior animals with AI connected to them walking in the street among us. That means right today in 2020, we're eating animals, but in the year 5025, you know, animals are walking in the street with rights, and like it's like you can't be rude to them. You know what I mean? It's like I created this situation where the intelligent activity of the species brought forth an equality where it became the greatest platform to build. So imagine if there was an alien species here and I was giving this talk, I would most likely in the description of the video write for humans only. Do you know? That means some things, they relate to the design that we're existing through. That is why I can speak to others about. But there's some things which has to do with the potential of the design. For me, imagination is the potential of reality. And it's literally like that, where you're noticing something in your inner realms before it has actually happened. Then you have a choice of making that happen, going in accordance to the known inner pattern, or you can just choose to enter the moment unknown. There's many rooms I have noticed what's in the room, then entered, and there's been many rooms, especially in my youth, where I would just open the door and just go inside. Just blast through a door, you know? So anyways, let's go back to language. The Sufi mystic poet Hafez says, "The words you speak become the house you live in." Then at the same time, in a different part of his poetic work, he says, "Bring your neck out of that dark nest in which you hide. I shall pour effulgence into your mind." An implication that language is a house we build for ourselves, but to get out of this house is also building a moment without a precondition. You know, what it seems to be going on this planet is that there is actually no need for a brain. There's no need for an individual mind. It's only the human species that has deviated with nature miraculously and has allowed the mind and the brain to not be under the imaginary limits of the ecosystem. So the moment we became aware we are in a system, we managed to step out of it, but not completely. And that's why civilization is advanced, but it's not perfect. You know, it's kind of chaotic. Sometimes I can't tell if the human being is running away from perfection or is running away from imperfection. I can't tell. Sometimes I feel that there was a perfection that never needed to do anything on this planet, and then there's moments where I see whatever we do is imperfect because the future generations deserve way more than we did. That means it's like whoever you are, wherever you are, just in your mind, visualize like a film, you know, fast forwarded into the future. Everything that we think we can't do, everything we think is judged, or it's as if like, what freedom do you see your grandkids having? And how do you not see that now for yourself? We have to engage the world, or it's as if we never saw it. We have to care for the design of nature. You know, there's so many people who they go and garden flowers. I see this, you know. I remember seeing this gardener at my cottage in Iran when I was young. And this gardener watered the plants, but when his kid came, he shouted at his kid, like, "Get out of here!" Like some intense shouting. And it was as if he was watering plants, but he wasn't watering the psychology of his own child. So I am telling you, it's like we have to take joy and what is actually efficient outside of the context of the person. That means the greatest leader of people is not a person, it is a condition. It is something we want to build. It's as if 8 billion designers got together one day on a sphere in a vacuum. And we're like, what do we do? Do we just melt like candles, or do we use the light to build something? You see, think of it this way. Think of it, your intelligence is not something that can be measured. It's not even something you can do too much anything about. Your intelligence is the light in the room. That means if suddenly someone comes and turns on a light, it's everybody's intelligence. You think Isaac Newton's contributions were only for him? No. And that's the cool thing. When you honestly care to go and figure out or find that unknown life in a world you don't know. I mean, what cooler, what situation can be cooler than this? You're an existential object subjectively experiencing yourself to a point where we can make decisions, we can notice the absence in the room. That means I was really impressed. I'm like, the dictionary has balls. Excuse my language, but the dictionary is really, really bold. The dictionary has attempted to define emptiness. The dictionary has attempted to define life, things that are not concepts. Concepts, at best, they're a picture on a wall or an event. That means, honestly, when I speak, I feel like the silence of the moment is a canvas, and every sound, every movement is literally like a brush moving on this canvas. Study your attention. It is the gift of the gods. It is honestly the gift that sees gods. We look at the emergence of the mind, the emergence of psychology. You know, it's fascinating to me. I think psychology had the rug pulled underneath it. You know, that means I think the term psyche means soul. But modern psychology has become so analytical and empirical in its approach that it can't comprehend the mind. That means if the mind doesn't behave like what we see, we can't, like, if the mind behaves in a way that we don't have a familiar pattern, it's like, what do we do then? It's like, how much can you use your reasoning if there are variables about the situation you're not seeing? You know, there are some people who are, it's like a business in the short run and long run. In the short time span, they're very smart, but in the long term, they're not. You see, the sooner you realize the only victory on this planet is a collective one, the sooner civilization will actually get to experience your advanced self. So if we can discriminate, if we can notice our free will separate from language, it means we are noticing our attention as a phenomena in the moment, but as the phenomena of the whole moment, not limited to the content inside it. What that means is, this is the example. The way knowledge is appearing to people, I think, it's literally like they go to a restaurant and there's a menu. And whether they make an order or not, a bunch of dishes are brought to the restaurant table, right? And the person is sitting there, and the scientist is studying every table, every dish, like looking, using the knife and fork to see what the food is made of, what is it like that. But the philosopher is just looking at the fork and the knife, and you can say the mystic has already stepped out of the restaurant. You see the difference? There are some people who, they don't doubt their hunger. They're just looking for the food. There's some people who wonder why they're hungry. And there's some people who have satisfied the hungers of their inferior nature, because they are now thirsting for their superior nature. It doesn't make sense. Even when we look at it, we are defining everything as objects, but atoms, particles of different substances are not the same. That means the halls of lattice, the architecture of particles for different elements are different. What does that mean? That means chemistry is existential programming. It's code. I would say there's no such thing as chemistry as a field on its own. Chemistry is like teaching coding. You see, the issue about the educational system today is that rather than inspiring the student to be an explorer of their realm, the educational system is just shouting at the student what the realm is, and the student has to. We've designed an educational system. If the student, do you know how many students never question the teacher? No students ask. You know, this differentiates really people in university who, when they go speak to their professor, they're speaking to the mind of that person. But there's some people who, they are so caught in identity games, that it's like they don't get to even see their life because they're so busy trying to identify with it. The free will is phenomenal. I mean, think about it. Right now, imagine you're sitting in a park, and imagine like teleportation technology was available, accessible. Like you could go to the grocery store and buy, like, I don't know, a teleportation keychain or something. It's like this little keychain you press. The moment you press it, like a meter in front of it, a portal arises, small portal. You just get into the portal like it's a tunnel, like it's like a giant tube or something, like it's small portal. I think true knowledge doesn't find the person until they see their true unknown. And the person can try as hard as they want. They could go searching for methods, they can, um, you know, continue the monkey business from branch of belief to branch of belief. But imagine one day realize the branch of knowledge you were holding was actually a tree you had planted long ago, that this whole realm was weaved by simpler ways of living before it. That means, most people can visualize, like, if we were in ancient Egypt, what would it be like? But sometimes I wonder if an ancient Egyptian walked into this world, what would the ancient Egyptian think? And the ancient Egyptians, they worshiped Ra, and the sun was like the source of their vision, so it made sense for them to worship it. That means we've had people worship objects, we've had people worship subjects, but the ancient Egyptians worshiped the light that allowed you to see the objects and the subjects. So technically, I'm not saying that sun worship is like a scarf that needs to be worn again, but I'm saying like it's like light is a huge factor in how existence and experience are instantaneously intelligent. Light and sound. That means if we were thinking from a dimension of pure movement, I don't know how to say it. I could say one thing though, guys. There is this story. It's one of the coolest Zen stories, one of the most hilarious Zen stories I've ever heard in my life. There's this Zen master. He is a simple man, and Zen masters were incredible minimalists because their whole point of Zen is to realize that there is no self that is fearing emptiness and emptiness. In emptiness, we are all absolute. That means if I want to compare myself to my earliest memory, that's technically me comparing myself to the past. But if I want to compare myself to emptiness, like some people are like, don't compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to your past self and improve. Like there's that mindset. So I'm telling you, imagine now Mr. Within is comparing himself to his past self, but the past self is the void. So every time I wake up, life is a celebration ground. Let me tell you why. Because we made it to the next day. What greater victory do you want here? That your eyes got to see another level, another level, another level, and do not fear this. Do you see, sometimes the idea of ideas are not introduced properly. The hardest task is to allow an idea to provide a universal natural freedom prior to any sort of localization in an approach, into an approach. This Zen master, living a minimalistic life on the edge of a mountain, he's coming home and it's like it's becoming dark, and he can notice there's the moon, but he can't see the moon. And so the Zen master comes home and he suddenly sees, like as he gets to his like small house by the foot of the mountain, he suddenly sees the door of his house is open. He goes inside and he sees there's a thief. But this thief, it's like this young kid who's come to steal, and this thief is looking inside the house, trying to find something, you know? And there's nothing. This guy's a Zen master. He has nothing in the house. It's like the house is pretty much like a cave for him. Like he's not living a physical life per se to only have physical possessions. A lot of human beings, they live lives, luxurious lives in their inner realms. There's a luxury in the outer realms, yeah. You bought a yacht, nice, good for you. But there's in the inner realms, man can fly as the universe. That's the luxury of the inner realms. It's a state of being where whatever you do is after that being. It's not prior to it. And if it is prior, it is not human. It cannot. It transcends the language threshold and the container of the human mind. This Zen master sees this thief, and this thief suddenly goes into paralysis. It's like a young kid making a mistake. And so this kid suddenly is frozen. Then the Zen master sees like this kid, even his clothing is poor. It seems like he has nothing. So the Zen master takes off whatever he had, like some sort of clothing or whatever. He takes off his clothing and he gives it to the kid, and he's like, you've come all this way. Don't leave empty-handed. Go and sell this. Right? And he just smiles. And the kid takes the clothing. He's like, this guy's a fool. And the kid takes the clothing and runs out of the house and runs. Now, this story, I gotta, like a film, give you two angles of what happens to the monk's mind after that event, after the kid runs out the house, and what happens to the kid. I will tell you the kid. The kid runs out of the house, storms out. He's like, look at this jackass, and he's running with this clothes. He's gonna sell and get something out of it, to just continue his misery a little bit further in an unjust way, And suddenly the kid stops, as if imagine you're running down like a hill with something, as if like a boulder's chasing you in your inner. And so this kid runs, suddenly he stops, and he gets goosebumps, and he gets shocked. And he says to himself, how could this guy give the only thing he had? What treasure does he know? What hidden value has he found in this temporary world that everything he had he could give? What hidden luxury is out there? So the kid gets shocked, realizing this treasure he thought he found is nothing. It's meaningless cloth in his hand. He pretty much realizes it, right? Now, I'll continue on as if like there was a drone that was seeing the kid. Now the drone, imagine, went towards the Zen master, I think time-traveling drones may happen if we make it. We might not make a time-traveling machine, but we might make a time-traveling drone. When I say time-traveling machine, like we might not go to the past, but just like how we don't go to Mars, we send robots there, we might be able to send robots back into time as like scanners. But anyways, the Zen master, he gives the clothing to the kid runs out, and the Zen master is just standing there in an empty house, and he's laughing. It's like there's nothing to do, and he just walks outside. And he suddenly sees the clouds have moved and the full moon is out. And he sits on a grass, and his attention suddenly goes to a dewdrop of grass, and in the dewdrop he sees the reflection of the moon, and he said, look at how beautiful this moon is. And that's the end of the Zen story. That was the state. A beauty unconditional. You find unconditional beauty You you are alive before death was born. A man was asked by an interviewer on this video I saw on YouTube from Buddha at the gas pump. I believe the man's name was Almas and the interviewer was Richard Parker. The interviewer asked the person, "Tell me about your history," like an interviewer trying to, introduce questions to the mind of the person being interviewed. And the person, this man who's Sufi inclined, but the man was a scientist, like he has a PhD in physics or something, you know. But the guy had suddenly had a spiritual turn of events in his life. And so when Richard Parker said, "Tell me about this history," the guy gave such an incredible answer. He said, "Well, there's three types of history. I have an individual history, which is from the beginning of this life to how far I've walked it so far. There is a universal history where I am not in self, I am the world's memory. And then there's a part of me that has no memory, has no history, was never born and never died." And the interviewer, I mean, I don't remember what the interviewer said, but probably it was something in the likes like, "What?" What? But that's the thing, that we have access to dimensions where it's unconditional, the energy. You see, energy is eternal. It's just, its forms are temporary. It's changing temporarily. So you can say temporality is the skin of the eternal. The skin of an eternal dimension. A dimension that could never be born. A dimension that could never die. And hence the Pure Land was required so the impure could be dualistic. I am telling you, singularity is the mother of duality. Duality is the father of infinity. Infinity is the mother of the void. Sorry, let me see if I got that right. The one dimension is the mother of the dual. The dual is the father of the infinite. The infinite yeah, makes perfect sense. The infinite is the okay, I'll say that again. This is the ring of the absent heaven. Pretty much go listen to the talk I gave before this. You'll know what I'm talking about. The singular dimension is the mother of dual. Singularity is the mother of duality. Duality is the father of infinity. Infinity is the mother of the void. The void is the father of the singular. Perfect. There we go. I would say the sky in mythology, they would say Gaia, the planet, was in some sense feminine, had a feminine archetype, and you can say a female archetype, and you can say that the sky was the father archetype or time. Both are interchangeable. So in some legends, for example, in Vedic tradition, like Krishna is revealing to Arjuna, "I am." Let me find the exact quote. Oh, here. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Oh, no, sorry. That's. Goddamn. It's showing Oppenheimer. It's before. I'm trying to find the Gita version. Sorry, guys. Hang on. I'm looking for something here. I am death, the destroyer of worlds, but I think it was something like I am time, the destroyer of worlds. I am time, the destroyer of worlds. I think Oppenheimer changed it to death. I think it was I am time. I can't find the quote here, but it's in the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, check this out. Actually, I found it here. Translation: the Supreme Lord, this is from the Bhagavad Gita, I am mighty time, the source of destruction that comes forth to annihilate the worlds. Even without your participation, the warriors arrayed in the opposing army shall cease to exist. That means it was as if Krishna, first of all, the Bhagavad Gita is pretty much an archer on a battlefield, doesn't want to fight the other army because his relatives are in the other army. And then Krishna, God, comes to him. And God is trying to convince Arjuna, this temporary being, that reality is an eternal landscape. And because it's an eternal landscape, the purpose of life is living for the event in the moment, not per se an intellectualization of a truth. Because in some sense, you can say to the designer is true. To the designer may not be true, may be incomprehensible. So check out this commentary. I'm going to read it for you guys. It says, in response to Arjuna's question regarding who he is, so pretty much Arjuna's like God appears to Arjuna, and Arjuna, this archer, is like, who are you? Shri Krishna, which is God, reveals his nature as all-powerful time, the destroyer of the universe. The word Kala is derived from Kalayati, which is synonymous with Ganayati, meaning to take count of. All events in nature get buried in time. When Oppenheimer, who was a part of the first atom bomb project, witnessed the destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he quoted this verse of Shri Krishna in the following manner: Time, I am the destroyer of all the worlds. Time counts and controls the lifespan of all beings. It will determine when the greatest personalities like Bhishma, Dronacharya, and Karn will meet their end. It will destroy the enemy army arrayed on the battlefield even without Arjuna's participation in the fight, because the Lord wants it to happen as part of his grand scheme for the world. If the warriors are already as good as dead, then why should Arjuna fight? Shri Krishna explains this in the next chapter. Okay, so Arjuna is smart. God tells him, I'm the destroyer of worlds, Arjuna. Pretty much everybody in this battlefield that you don't want to fight and is going to die, I'm going to pretty much destroy them all. I'm going to conquer them all. And Arjuna says, if everybody's as good as dead, why do you want me to fight then? Arjuna's smart. And I'm going to read for you the next thing because I think I'm curious to know what it is. Therefore, so this is the translation of the chapter. Therefore, arise and attain honor. Conquer your foes and enjoy prosperous rulership. These warriors stand already slain by me, and you will only be an instrument of my work, O expert archer. But here's the weird thing, guys. If Krishna is God, why is he convincing Arjuna? Why isn't he, with a snap of a finger, making Arjuna instantly go to war? Why is he talking to Arjuna? That's the interesting thing I want to know. Any Gita scholars out there, please send me a message about this. It's Bhagavad Gita. Actually, no, that's something different. But anyways. Shri Krishna this is the commentary, guys. Shri Krishna has revealed to Arjuna his will that the Kauravas should perish and the kingdom of Hastinapur should be administered by the Pandavas, in accordance with the rules of Dharma. He has already decided the annihilation of the unrighteous and the victory of the righteous as the outcome of the battle. His grand scheme for the welfare of the world cannot be averted by any means. He now informs Arjuna that he wishes him to be the Nimitta Matram, or the instrument of his work. God does not need the help of a human for his work, but humans attain eternal welfare by working to fulfill God's wish. Opportunities that come our way to accomplish something for the pleasure of the Lord are a very special blessing. It is by taking these opportunities that we attract His special grace and achieve our permanent position as the servant of God. See, Shri Krishna also encourages Arjuna to be his instrument by reminding him of the exceptional skills he has received in the art of archery by his grace. Hence, he addresses him with the vocative Savya Sachin, meaning expert archer, since Arjuna is admirably ambidextrous and is able to discharge arrows with either hand. Wow. Okay, that's next level. I didn't know that. Anyways, guys, I mean, of course, this is an ancient story we're reading. But the point of it, I think, is that once a person comprehends, understands a system, then it's very easy for them to work in it. So the whole Bhagavad Gita is as if Arjuna doesn't understand something, but he has this next level skill, and it's as if it's required for him to participate in the event. Now, of course, back in the day, the people weren't so soft and politically correct. War was everywhere, pretty much, so their language was way more intense. We have to realize as our behavior has become more civilized and gentle and calm and collected, it's become like a situation where the language has also accompanied the behavior. That means it's honestly the language that enters your mind is the world that steps out of your mind. Leads to the type of world stepping out of your mind. You know, guys, this is strange, but I want to jump into a quote tunnel of a French philosopher named Albert Camus. You know, it seems like what feels right after reading the Bhagavad Gita. But Albert Camus, he has this next level quote, and of course he's an existential atheist, and you could say his metaphysics is absurdity. So he's a person who doesn't see, for example, metaphysics, but he acknowledges absurd. So, for example, when we have militant atheists saying, for example, it's like something is woo-woo, right? Woo-woo is a word. I mean, it's such a childish word, but I'm just trying to say, like, it's the inner realms are not. As Sadhguru says, the content of your mind is not your choice. That means somebody beside you says, apple! You're going to suddenly see an image of an apple. It wasn't your choice. It was literally like the weather. Is the weather our choice? No. You don't see people crying and suffering. Oh, I can't change the weather. You know, why am I failing in life? I can't change the weather when I want. It's like, yeah, because it's not, nobody can. You know? There's two ways out of any sort of moment where the person is looking down on themselves or anything. You get bored out of the moment not updating when it can. We have to free the imagination from matter, and we have to free reality from subjects. We have to dare to step anew in this world. As Morihiro Shiva says, create each day anew. And as Albert Camus says, in the depths of winter, I found within me. In the depths of winter, I found within me, oh my God, an invincible summer. He doesn't say, oh my God. Here, I'll tell you the full quote. In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. And that makes me happy, for it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me there's something stronger, something better, pushing right back. In the depths of winter, I found within me an invincible summer. You know, when you reach that point, you have already taken a couple steps in an advanced civilization, you know, in your inner realms. Albert Camus says, "You will never be happy if you continue to search for what happiness consists of. You will never live if you're looking for the meaning of life. When you have once seen the glow of happiness on the face of a beloved person, you know that a man can have no vocation but to awaken that light on the faces surrounding him. Always go too far, because that's where you'll find the truth." Albert Camus says, no matter how hard... I read that. Albert Camus says, people hasten to judge in order not to be judged themselves. Camus says, life can be magnificent and overwhelming. That is the whole tragedy. Without beauty, love, or danger, it will almost be easy to live. Albert Camus says, you will never be happy... Oh, no, I read that. He says, when the soul suffers too much, it develops a taste for misfortune. This quote is something I hope our species can bypass in the future. So that's the thing. A person has self-respect when they realize their self is as free as the world they see that self in. An advanced civilization has gotten over a phase of the tears of sorrow. We get rid of the tears of sorrow. We go through that phase, and then the avalanches of tears of joy will come. Albert Camus says real generosity towards the future lies in giving all to the present. Albert Camus says the only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. Albert Camus says it is the job of thinking people not to be on the side of the executioners. Albert Camus says to be happy, we must not be too concerned with others. Albert Camus says man is the only creature who refuses to be what he is. That's really poetic, that we have deviated from nature. We have rebelled against nature, but we realize it was an immature rebellion. You know? Now we're like, oh man, we wish... You know, sometimes I laugh. You know, I understand, of course, non-duality and Advaita and the significance of even the balance between heaven and earth, or Tao. I will tell you this. Oneness, you can't do anything about. In the void, there is nothing to even do anything. Only in the dualistic dimension there's choice, and in the infinite we can experience the advancement of duality at speeds that, as it becomes inconceivable, it evokes dimensions. So just like a person expanding their house, you know, building, imagine, more to their house, it would be something like, I don't know, we're trying to expand the eyes of the species by shaking language through direct experience. What else can we do in this lovely place? You know, so there are so many people who Honestly, it's like I'm just thinking, what do people want from this experience of existence? What can you possibly want? And it's limited to any sort of condition. It's like um, thinking is limited to revelation of thought or the identification of thought. And there's even no such thing as a thought thinking it's a thought. What is that? You know? It's a paradox. I'm telling you. There is nothing rational about a rock in the middle of nowhere. What rationality? It's like what norm? What is normal in a changing world? Can someone please tell me? What is normal in a changing world? We change as a self every day we wake up, and the world changes, you know? So what does that mean? That means even if you're a person who has the same belief, you have become a different self tomorrow. So technically you can never have the same belief. Beliefs are momentary glimpses at something, and you think that glimpse is going to be there forever, but you're going to realize no. The sophistication of the design of nature has been a sort of transcension of dimensional limit. So what does that mean? I see, for example, you can say this is in my personal school of thought. This is Mr. Within, so you can say view on evolution. Of course, I entertain what the mainstream is. I understand the theories out there on evolution, but this is my view on it in the sense that first there were 4 phases, and we are currently in the 3rd phase of evolution. The first phase of evolution was the unconscious world, UW, I call it. Unconscious world. This was the first phase. There was nobody here. It was just the world was being born. The world was growing up. After the world had grown up to a certain capacity, there was the possibility of life forms, this is a remarkable mystery. But I consider after UW we go to UC, we go to US, the unconscious self. From an unconscious world, we went to an unconscious self. This is how I define the objective evolution. That it was creaturehood, the design of limbs, the design of a separate body. Creaturehood was the objective evolution. Now, the reason I say US, unconscious self, is because this object was just like a moving, crawling energy thing. It didn't have velocity yet. It didn't have direction. It didn't have a mind yet. It was just body energy expressing. Do you know? So after this phase, something happened where they don't teach it in schools, where I have coined it the subjective evolution. And this is the way I am explaining it. That it's the 3rd phase, it is the conscious self. We have reached that. We are there right now as a species. It's called the subjective evolution. What does that mean? That means imagine first there being a physical world, then the emergence of a physical creature. Technically, the ecosystem is the imagination, mind, and limits of the intelligence of this creature. This creature somehow, as Jacques Lacan says, like there was a mirror effect. It noticed itself. Either it saw its shadow, either it looked at its hands and body too long and we're like, what the fuck is this? Or it was like as if the creature looked into a pond or some ice or something. Some self-reflective mode occurred. So when that subjective evolution occurred, that means that matter evolved to a subject to itself. That means we shouldn't have too firm of a conclusion on the material position of the realm, because it's not just the material landscape, it is a subjective linguistic based realm where the language has a superiority of firmness in the inner realms. That means when you close your eyes, language is literally as real as the world. Like knocking on a door. When I close my eyes, do you know what that feels like? That literally feels like I have stepped out of the Iron Man suit of the object-subject game. I remember it's like when I was young, I would go, in my house, there was this group of people. We would sometimes play in the parking lot of the house. It was an apartment, and some of my cousins were living in the same building. And so we would all go down. We were all around the same age, and we are young kids, and we would go and play soccer, football in the, what do you call it? In the parking lot of the apartment, where cars would come in throughout the day, in and out, and we were just playing the parking lot. But there would be times where we would go outside on the street and play, and it was such a level of sophisticated playing soccer, because we would just put two bricks, because cars would pass. We would just designate sometimes goalposts, and people were playing in a street where cars would pass by. But anytime a car would come, the car would wait, and we would instantly get off the road. The car would pass, and everybody would continue playing. You know, and that's how it feels. The individual, the subject-object relationship. It feels like a game that attention participates in the moment there is a waking up. The moment you wake up, actually, in the morning, your attention is in the administration of your free will. Your free will has entered the room. And if you know your freedom, you don't depend just on the will. That means if you are free, the lords of karma shield you. We have thought of the notion of, in archaic thought, theological even thought, the guardian and the angel, the infusion of those. And the difference between the archetype of the angel and the archetype of the human was that the archetype of the angel had no free will. Its will was the divine will. So a guardian angel would technically mean it's like the source, it's like the cause watching over the effect. And honestly, what do you think this species deserves? Does it deserve emptiness? Because if we do, then we were never in the room. That's the thing. You know what it is? It's like the human species is like a genetical pen writing on the notebook of the planet, on the notebook of universal existence. Experience is authoring itself. And if time is the destroyer of all worlds, and if man is witnessing time, man is the witness of the destruction of all worlds. For the witness is a changeless moment, truly, which we cannot as individuals truly go that non-dual. That's the magnificence of this world. You can have as many. This character in this comic series said this, and it was called Shingeki no Kyojin, this Japanese comic series. In this comic series, there is a character who's young, a new recruit soldier in the army of humanity fighting these giants. It's a great giant epic, the narrative. And so there's a character named Levi, which is this very skilled and experienced captain. And then there's this soldier who has this special ability, this great power, but he doesn't have experience, but he has this sort of warriors march for justice. Warriors rage for justice. So he has this great power, this kid, and he's freaking out. He's scared, you know? And it's a very intense situation where they're being chased by this giant, the whole team. And the kid, I think, says something like, should I use my power? And some people say yes, some people say don't. But then the captain looks at the kid and says, Aaron, the kid's name is Aaron. He says, I have trusted in myself, in my comrades, in my own skill, in my comrades, in the battle plans, but no one ever knows how it's going to turn out. So if you feel you can do something, do something, you know? And the kid, in that moment of the show, in that scene, what he does is he doesn't use his power, and so many people die. And it becomes a life lesson for him that he becomes responsible for his moment, you know? So, guys, my attention has come to the chat section. You think says, perhaps here to help others to see how to open their mind hearts with gratitude and trusting selves from within. Remember this, you think. Galileo says this. Galileo says this, that you can never teach a man anything. You can make him realize it from within himself. That means there is no such thing as teaching. That's any time the person comes and says, "I'm a teacher," you're a student. That's a stupid. It's like it doesn't make sense. You know what the notion should be is that the whole species is an explorer species, and we're just sharing our findings. You know, we are like generals in the general's tent. 8 billion generals in the general's tent. You know. Lisa says, yes, self preservation and internal peace, but do you believe at times altruism is necessary? I am not saying altruism is necessary. I'm saying it's necessary, but let me tell you the way I'm saying it is that we have no better game to play on this planet other than to build an advanced civilization. Altruism is not something that's necessary or unnecessary. Altruism is the end 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 uh the end free I wanted to say end freedom, but it's not. There is no end to freedom when you're no longer an ideological creature, because the beginning and the middle end only relate. They relate to the outcome. That means, I mean, like, it's like we're in the middle of a story. The beginning of it was savage, and now the ending most likely is going to be peaceful. That means, imagine there's no such thing as intelligence, it's just updates. Like how in the Transformer movie, the kid in the yellow car was like, "Look at this car, it's a piece of shit." excuse my language, like the actor didn't say it like that, but the actor like dishonored the car, and the car looked at a better car that sponsored the film, and that car, suddenly the car transformed to that car. You see, so it was seeing a better way to live and implementation of it. In the outer realms, yes, you got to look in the mirror and accept what you see. But in the inner realms, it comes and goes way quicker than the outer realms. You see, it's the end freedom result. The end, I don't know, it's like every time I think of the freedom at the end of a system, it's like the end of freedom. Either we increase the standard of our inner living, our inner life, or we remain in fear, never knowing what we could be. I'm telling you, imagine right now you were some mystic and you suddenly went and touched a tree, just to touch the tree, just to see the texture of the bark, and accidentally you attained all the knowledge on this planet. Imagine you attained everything. That means imagine right now you had all the knowledge. If you knew everything, there would be nothing to know. There would be no need for reason. There would be no such thing as mistakes. There would be no such thing as variety. There would be no such thing as excitement and wonder. You know? So the information age is a phase. We shouldn't be creatures that are too defined by information. It makes life artificial after a while if the information is not being naturally updated. You know? What a quote, this was the first sentence I wrote that I declared to myself I was a writer. So as a writer, I've written a lot, but I could tell you as a writer, the first sentence I wrote where I felt it was truly me, right? It was from me. It was the sentence I wrote that was, I don't want to live in a world that looks the same the next day. Because the past has already been seen. What can you do with the past? It's the toolbox for a future. To get back to the topic, in 2011, I sat on a rock in this park in Toronto, Canada called Edwards Garden. This rock was in the middle of this river. I sat there, the river was coming from behind me, so I just saw the water moving forth. And I remember in that moment, sitting on that rock in the middle of that river, looking at the water kind of go forth. It was a moment where I asked a question from myself I had never asked. It wasn't even a question, it was something I had noticed. That it was like, who is looking through my eyes right now? That question, somehow my mind found it, noticed it. And when I found that question, I was sitting on that rock, and it was as if I was like, who am I? And my mind would project an inner realm answer. Then it would be another inner realm answer. I would ask the question, who am I? And my mind would project, and I realized I am not the content of my mind. I am watching it though. And that was when I noticed that there is something here that is alive in the space. That we thought matter was only embodied by intelligence. Oh, space is the other side of the coin. We are after we have mastered matter, mountains, the material mountains, then the immaterial mountains await. Or you can say, in another poetic angle, that after you climb the mountain of matter, when you reach the peak, there is no longer, the journey is not with material feet, it's with immaterial wings. That means after you have completed the initial simulation of individual living, the world soul approaches, and our mind, like a lighthouse, notices the Titanic that never sunk, the success of efficiency. For if there is freedom for chaos, who says order doesn't have freedom? You know, maybe perhaps when we are over the idea of the soul, we have become the oversoul. In that experience, when I was sitting on that rock in that river, It's only in the Pure Lands that time doesn't bother you. It is the being that have that has accepted simplicity that can walk through any complexity. If you deny your own simplicity, if you exile and banish the nature of your inner child or your memories or your earlier, if you dishonor your earlier memories, after a point you'll stop ceasing to exist, or you'll stop feeling you deserve your life. We are the presence of energy that cannot be created or destroyed. We are the personality of forms changing from potential modalities that are multidimensional in the inner realm to singular possibilities that are there in the outer realms. An advanced civilization will require a skill with the outer realms and the inner realms. No longer the idea of yoga mysticism should be fascinating in the same way as, oh, what did they do back then? It's as if right now it's, you know what it is? It's as if we, instead of us, it's like imagine how hilarious would it be if an Olympian gave a torch to the other Olympian, but that Olympian began running the way back that Olympian had run first. Do you see? That means whatever we are given by the past, we are not meant to become the past. We are meant to do something with it, the future. That means wield your past as you walk into the future, but don't let your past become your future. A foolish child once one night found an audience with the Gaian mind, the Gaian mother. This fool that had found an audience with the Gaian mind asked an incredibly intelligent question. And the question was, what is humanity when you are here? And let us say, in that moment, the Gaian mind told the fool a story of one night the moon complaining to the sun. The moon, like the daughter of the sun, shouted at the sun and said, is my light my own, or am I in the shadow of your light? The moon asked the sun, do I have my own light, or is my light yours? And imagine the sun started laughing. Or let me lead the response of the Gaian mind to the fool in this way. that if the sunbeam if the sunbeam thinks it's the sun, it will suffer. If it realizes it is the servant of the void realm, it will be in joy. That means if the moon sees the sun, it can't be the moon. So as you get rid of suffering, you also get rid of your joys, you know. And as the coin of joy and sorrow spins in the void, we're looking for change. I would say the resolution of how we should live on this earth is not to per se ultimately try to be like the causal point of intelligence. We have to accept our nature and play our existential part. And because the universe is unknown, there can be no certainty on fear. That means, as Terence McKenna has said, nobody knows enough to worry. As Socrates has said, the only true wisdom is to know that you know nothing. So when you realize you actually know nothing, you don't judge your inner self. When you don't judge your inner self, you find a strange freedom to run into this. The world opens up. You know, when you realize that the idea of you that perhaps may have been a source for suffering is not a physical thing, it's just the angle of attention, then you'll suddenly get this excitement for how many other ways there is to see the same world. And then that leads to advancement. The inner realms and the outer realms, for the outer realms, there is an inner realm. For the inner realm, truly, when you really go within, there is no within or without. For the presence of the moment, there is no personality-based truth. For the personality, it has to avoid the presence because it needs to use time. An archetype is a phenomena of time, or I could say a noumenon of time. That means there's time is there as a dimension, you know. So what that means is man may be wearing a watch, but maybe the cosmos isn't. Guys, I'm going to continue with this Albert Camus code tunnel a bit more, and then end off probably. If anybody has questions, feel free to share it. I'll probably be for like 10 minutes in the Discord after the talk. Okay, there we go. Blessed are the hearts that can bend, they shall never be broken. Albert Camus says, seeking what is true is not seeking what is desirable. Albert Camus says, we all carry within us places of exile, our crimes, our ravages. Our task is not to unleash them on the world, it is to transform them in ourselves and others. Albert Camus says the evil that is in the world almost always comes from ignorance, and good intentions may do as much harm as malevolence if they lack understanding. Albert Camus says nobody realizes that some people expend tremendous energy merely to be normal. Albert Camus says, I know that man is capable of great deeds, but if he isn't capable of great emotion, well, he leaves me cold. That means, honestly, I think what's going to happen to a global emergence of a community is that Western civilization that has experienced more freedom, and let us say Eastern civilization that has advanced, let's say in Western Enlightenment was freedom based, Eastern Enlightenment was discipline based. So what that means is it's as if two brain hemispheres, now these brain hemispheres need to communicate. Because there's some people I see, not everybody is like a robot processing everything, calculating everything, you know? People are just living as emotions, as just expressions, do you know what I mean? Not everything is too firm. So if you choose to use more of an emotional navigation in this plane of existence, freedom is most likely the peak value of your system, you know? If you are more, let's say, discipline and pattern based, then in some sense it's not about freedom, it's about doing the right thing, and then you get freedom. But here's the thing: Eastern and Western Enlightenment, be free first, then do the right thing. Eastern Enlightenment, sorry, be free, then bring discipline. Eastern Enlightenment, be disciplined, then have experience freedom. Those, you can say, those are the models, you know. So eventually, this in the digital community, I think it's what's being wielded. It's pretty much we are, whether we know it or not, we're acting like neurons in a brain. Most likely, we should. The best thing we can do is design society like our brains. In the brain, it's not like one part of the brain has more power than other parts. It's not like one part is superior to another. The whole brain suggests the intelligence of the human being. The whole brain activity. Albert Camus says, "There is no sun without shadow, and it is essential to know the night." Albert Camus says, "The need to be right, the sign of a vulgar mind." So, anyways, guys, I think we have evolved through objects. I didn't finish the four phases of evolution. So after the subjective evolution, so we went unconscious world, unconscious self, the objective evolution, then the conscious self, CS, which is the conscious self is where we are right now, which is the subjective evolution. It is where duality has emerged, the subject-object duality. Now, the next phase of our evolution is most likely the conscious world. That would mean right now we are identifying with the biological body in the moment. I think it's going to be a return to nature, an evolutionary return to nature, which is going to render us. It's not going to render us, but it's like there's a huge chance that as our acquaintance and familiarity with faster speed happens, like we become more acquainted to everything in life being faster, then it's as if we don't want to use our mouths anymore because we want to speak so fast. It's like you can't say it that instantly, right? So what will happen is most likely we will throw information holograms. This was a recent idea that has come to me, where it's like we're gonna like play baseball with communication, but in an incredibly technological way. Albert Camus, there was this one quote he had, which I read. He says, It's very essential. This quote deserves. Many of his quotes deserve to be in the Museum of Language. But he says, the only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. He's literally giving like an algorithm to building an advanced civilization where you must find an allowance for your own existence and more advanced expression in the inner realms. You know, the inner realms are, because the people think imagination has to be like reality. If it had to be like reality, we wouldn't have it as a separate concept. We wouldn't even call it imagination. You know, we would be like, right now we are treating imagination like it's in a different room rather than it's an extension of reality. Do you know? But I could say imagination is like the roots of the tree in a soil we cannot see. The roots of the mind. There was once I was sitting at a dinner table, and it was such a strange thought. Like, I don't know why I even had this thought. I'm sitting at this dinner table, and suddenly, in my inner realms, I see my head, like my hair, literally becoming like branches, like root. It was weird, not like branches, like roots of a tree, but the roots were stretching towards the sky. And I'm there, like at the dinner table, you know, sitting at this gathering, you know. And in my inner realms I'm seeing roots, literally, as if like your brain, your mind is rooted in cosmic activity. So you're aware of the game here, not just only as a player. It's like you feel the grass of the field before you run it. You know, if the person feels they deserve a better life, then instantly their inner realms require to move to it, you know. This was what I couldn't comprehend when I was younger, that I was looking for change outside of myself. And what's outside of yourself is not yourself. You know, it's like the person's like, how do I change myself? And then the yogi's like, buddy, you're changeless. What do you want to change? You're changelessly witnessing the change. It's like, what it's like, what? An advanced civilization would mean an advanced movement and ability to skill and ability with existence, and, navigating existence, piloting through existence, and an advanced ability to pilot as an experiencer. That means it's like, for me, your strength as a human being doesn't have to come from only the gym. It has to come from you noticing different states of your own mind. Like, I don't know how many people, for them, deep sleep is interesting. For me, it is a shock. It is a shock that I wake up in the day, see a little bit of the show, then suddenly it's like the battery is low and we have to sleep to recharge it, you know? But there is this other idea also, that when something is important, the universe provides energy for it. That means anything, if you get a piece of paper and sit down, and literally you're someone in whatever kind of life, you get a piece of paper and you're like, all right, for a second, let me put a pause on this character in a story narrative of life I'm living, and for a moment, as a living being, as a breathing biological creature on a rock in the middle of nowhere, what is important for me? And if you use the sieve of importance, you filter the story of your life through the theme of importance, you will suddenly see that there are emotions that are must be made conscious from the subconscious, you can say, before they can evolve. So I don't know how to say it, that sometimes in life all you can do is just be with it. But then there's moments in life which are rare. They are like commands from the universal sector for intelligence to open its eyes in a certain way. Intelligence is not just what you have, it's what you do with what you have. And if you interpret your intelligence in a way that deviates from your true nature, you will suffer, not because you deserve it or life is cruel. You suffer because you haven't looked at yourself the way you actually deserve. And so the first rule is, usually karmic turbulence arises with retaliation against unknown events. So the first thing is like, as Buddha says, like anger is like burning coal. When you get angry, your own hands burn, but also the person you throw the burning coal on, you know? So anger is something that in the inner realms, it should be extinguished, that flame. So you should never, if you're an advanced human being, you should never let your anger step out unless it's being expressed to the situation is an intense situation where you have to energetically like match the moment, you know. That means it's like you shouldn't fear roaring in the lion's den, you know. Without trust, nothing activates. You can't even ride a bike if you don't trust the bike, if you don't trust your own strength, if you don't trust your own vision. That means everybody, your moment of being is your teacher. Everything else is a part of your moment of being. If you're wise, you will get rid of your enemies, as in Tibetan Buddhist wisdom, they say, unless you conquer your anger, anger is conquered, your enemies will be inexhaustible. That means don't think that in the inner realms the mind cannot create enemies for itself. You can become enemies of nature even. You know, a person can suddenly hate something without understanding it. And a person can also love something without understanding it. What the effort of understanding is really, it's just a species wondering what they're standing under. And I don't know, it's like do we remain in the cave of a world we don't want to know beyond and we just accept a certain normality, or do we attempt to build a multidimensional civilization where we realize now for the first time in history inner events, internal events in the psyche are having required to happen more. The person's mind needs to change quicker than the outer realms. If your mind changes slower than the outer realms, the past has shackled you. You're like a titan shackled by your own lack of effort. That means imagine like the the gods shackled the titans in Greek mythology, you know, but then the gods knew intentionally that the shackles were something that they could easily be broken, but they saw the titans were so dismissing their own strength in the narrative of the moment that it's as if they would try to break from the chains, but they never thought they could. When I look at the purpose of life, It's limited to my access of it. The meaning, like even the linguistic meaning. But when I wonder about the purpose of the presence of my moment, that purpose is kept unknown. It doesn't have a known container. You cannot contain energy sometimes. You know, just like the wind. You feel something there, but you never saw it. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. It took us 4 billion years to be able to even notice our suffering. It took us 4 billion years to evolve so we can be depressed, so we can even have the definition and the consciousness to even notice. But now, as we evolve beyond the subject through the cocoon of language towards the conscious world, once you realize mistakes exist in man's mind, as a sage had said, nature is not imperfection to perfection. It's perfection to perfection. The imperfection was the simulation, you know? So be free before you need to be. Thanks for listening, guys. Anyone interested, I'll be on Discord. Blessings. And in the middle of nowhere, life is beginning now here. Literally nowhere is now here. Cheers, guys. Cheers.